Roundtable Radio back on the air. Wrestling Roundtable is here once again. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria, your favorite communist dictator, and I've been in wrestling about 7.5 years. Sometimes I kind of feel bad about it because, geez, it's like every show we do, we have a heavy dose of criticism, but a lot of honesty, and sometimes you get a little bitter, sometimes you lose perspective, and every time I meet someone new and they ask me what I do, and I said, I'm in wrestling, and I do videography, and I do this and do that and whatever, and anytime I tell new people, it's usually like, wow, that's so cool, that's so neat, and they seem so giddy about it, and then there's me who's like, a lot of the time, and I kind of feel bad about it. I was thinking about that this week, and that's not to say brush over and sweep the ills of the industry underneath a rug or anything. I call it as I see it, and so does everyone else on this show. At the same time, I just wanted to point that out there, that sometimes I got to step back and be like, yeah, I've done some cool stuff. I did a documentary that everyone seemed to like. I have worked with a lot of cool people, one of whom I want to talk about later on because he debuted on TV on Friday, and some other things. So it's certainly not all bad or anything like that. So just wanted to mention that at least right at the top of the show. And I'm going to introduce the other panelist. His name is Will Evan Brooks. Will Brooks is in the chat room on WrestlingRoundtable.com every Monday night during Raw. And he's been watching wrestling a long time and MMA. So good evening or night, whatever it is. If you're listening in England, it's probably way early in the morning. Will Brooks, welcome to the show.
Hello, Eric. Can't wait to hang out with you this weekend, man, and watch Brock Lesnar take the living shit out of Cena. It's going to be great.
And that's going to be after our taping because this Sunday we are taping 2 new episodes of the Wrestling Roundtable. It's going to have a lot of people on the panel, I'm hoping. Some returns, actually. Some people who've been on the panel before. We're going to have an all-wrestler panel for at least one segment because we're going to talk about independent wrestling with Grizzly Redwood, Alex Payne, and Shane Hagedorn. That should be very interesting. Right off the bat, well, we're going to dive into mixed martial arts because there was the big show. There was kind of a lull in UFC pay-per-views the past couple months. Some free shows, a lot more free shows now because of the Fox deal, FX, Fuel TV. The last pay-per-view was last time we taped, actually, in February. After the taping, we went back to my place. We watched UFC from Japan, but that was 2 months ago already. And like I said, kind of a lull until this past Saturday, which was UFC's Atlanta return to the Phillips Arena. The response, at least from what I saw in the Facebook group, the show wasn't that good. And I think what that really shows is how important the main event is. Like we've talked about many times, like for instance, Bound for Glory in October when we went to TNA in Philadelphia, it had a good undercard. Pretty good show, actually pretty exemplary, up until the main event. And then that soured the whole impression of the night. And I think that's what happened here because I don't think people were very happy with the main event. I was one of them, but we'll get into detail about that later. But point being that I thought the undercard was actually pretty good, but I think people lose sight of that. And starting from the prelim, actually, because this aired during the show because they had some time, I wanted to mention at least the Travis Brown heavyweight fight against the debuting Chad Griggs. Chad Griggs is a name that you hopefully know because he was the man who stopped Bobby Lashley's undefeated streak. He was the first one to get a victory over Bobby Lashley, and he seemed pretty good, seemed to be going well in his Strikeforce career. We saw him last year in Izod, and he got a victory there. And Chad Griggs seems like a kind of a likable guy. He kind of looks like Harlan Williams' older, heavier brother got into MMA. But all the same, I was looking forward to seeing him debut because they're bringing over all the heavyweights to UFC. But it did not go well for him because Travis Brown finished him right in the first round via submission, got him on the ground, and finished him off with a head and arm triangle. So not exactly how Chad Griggs wanted to start his UFC career. So any thoughts, Will Brooks, on Travis Brown's victory?
I do remember seeing Chad Griggs win at the Izod Center. That was a lot of fun. So hopefully he'll rebound.
All right. So moving on to the pay-per-view itself, though, we start bouncing around in different weight divisions. First up is the featherweight division, 145. And Mark Hominick, man, I feel bad for this guy. He had a really good showing out in Toronto. Even in defeat, with that huge egg on his head, he made Jose Aldo look human in the 5th round and looked like he might actually come close to winning. And then, of course, he got knocked out by Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, in seconds with a punch that knocked him down, and he continues his losing streak here. But it was a really good fight. In fact, it won Fight of the Night, but it was the opener, and Mark Hominick lost to Eddie Yagin by split decision. Bloody fight, good fight, but unfortunately, like I said, a loss for Hominick. Many in a row now. Your thoughts on the opener?
I was actually rooting for Mark Hominick. Like you said, he's on a losing streak right now. I like him as a fighter. I think he's very talented. So I was really rooting for him, but it was a close fight, and I'm not really going to argue with Yagin winning. I could see why he won, but it was close. He could have won either way.
Moving on, it's back to the heavyweights because Ben Rothwell got a big win over Brendan Schaub. Brendan Schaub, who we saw beat the holy hell out of Mirko Cro Cop just last year, but Schaub did not look good this year because he lost to Ben Rothwell in the 1st round by knockout. Ben Rothwell punched him out, and as I mentioned, Travis Brown before, the other victorious heavyweight, both heavyweight fighters here, pretty much coming out unscathed, maybe a little blood, but nothing too damaging, and that seemed like they might have been able to secure a spot in that 146 huge all night of the heavyweights coming up, but it was not to be. They're going to have to wait on the sidelines with Mark Hunt for a little bit, and the rest of the heavyweights are going to put on an awesome show there, I'm sure. But as it was, Ben Rothwell beats Brendan Schaub.
Well, you kind of skipped over the Michael McDonald, Miguel Torres fight, man. We can get back to that. The thing that I thought was hilarious about this fight was, I like Schaub, I like Rothwell, so I was looking forward to this fight. They're both bangers. But Schaub was landing clean shot after clean shot after clean shot on Rothwell. And it seemed like Rothwell only landed one punch. It just happened to be the one punch that he only needed to land, which it cost him right across the face. He went down and looked like he was about to beat the shit out of him. I give Rothwell a lot of credit for staying in there and taking his shots and then landing the one shot that only mattered.
Yes, I wrote my notes a little out of order because we're going to get back to the bantamweight division, which was Michael McDonald getting a victory over Miguel Torres. Torres coming back after the firing that happened a few months ago because of the rape joke on Twitter, and yes, he made good with that, and he washed his hands of it and apologized, and now he's back, but bam, knocked out. Yet another finish. Michael McDonald knocks out Miguel Torres in his comeback fight, so your thoughts on that?
There was a time when I was a huge Miguel Torres fan. I thought Miguel Torres was easily one of the top 5 fighters, probably top 4 fighters in the world. And it just sucks when I look at him now how far he's fallen off, man. Because he was so great for a period of time. It's like he's not even close to being on that level anymore. It's really sad. I thought Michael McDonald put on a good fight. I mean, he kicked his ass. What are you going to do?
You wanted to talk about the welterweight fight with Rory McDonald beating Che Mills in the 2nd round via TKO because GSP holding his bucket, that's the exact person that they were comparing Rory McDonald to, another Canadian welterweight, and he impressed you, certainly. How was that?
I had not even heard of this guy before this fight started. I just saw the highlight reel. I'm like, dude, this guy is like giving guys German suplexes in like a cage, which is not easy to do because you're doing it with dead weight. It's not like you can tell you that where guys are jumping with you. So I'm thinking, oh shit, this guy's really fucking strong for his weight class. So I'm thinking, okay, let me check this guy out. And they're saying he's the next GSP. I mean, that's worth looking at. And I'm watching the fight. He is absolutely, just like a GSP, dominating him in every facet of the game. He's kicking his ass in the standing, on the ground. He's moving up. He's just beating his ass. And it was just like, dude, like this guy Che Mills has like no answer for anything. And it just was like, man, I can see what people are talking about. And I think this guy's going to be a player. And we'll see if he will maybe one day get a title shot, maybe in the near future. He's got to face a name now, though. I mean, you can hype somebody all you want, but you have to beat somebody who's a name. So hopefully we'll see that soon.
Well, then we go on to the main event. As I alluded to earlier, this was the light heavyweight title defense from John Jones against Rashad Evans. A lot of hype, a lot of build-up, and a lot of bad feelings. Of course, Rashad Evans was in line to get a title shot multiple times, and injuries set him back. So this was a long time in coming. In fact, John Jones got the title when he defeated Mauricio Shogun Hua last year in Newark in a fight that originally was going to go to Rashad Evans himself. So John Jones was substituted in there and victorious. Since then, and this has continued with Saturday, since then he has defended his title multiple times, 3 times actually, and all against former light heavyweight champions. The other 2, Quentin Jackson in September and Lyoto Machida in December, were submission and technical submission victories, but this was not a finish. This was a unanimous decision, and somehow only one judge agreed with my score of 50-45. I'd love to ask the other 2 judges, which round exactly did Rashad Evans win here? Because I did not see that whatsoever. I was pretty disappointed with the fight, and I really shouldn't have been, because really, when's the last time Rashad Evans has delivered? Chuck Liddell? How many times have we been disappointed between the Rampage fight he's had, the Phil Davis fight he's had, and I really felt the Rashad Evans of old, let's say, is the one that he would have needed to conjure up to defeat John Jones. As it was, I felt John Jones, between the 2 of them, took a little more chances, but was still somewhat cautious. Rashad Evans could not implement a game plan here. He only tried a couple takedowns, unsuccessful. He was not taken down himself in this fight, but again, it didn't seem like there was any urgency, really. He kept trying to land those haymakers, not connecting with most of them, but John Jones himself, even though he landed a couple strikes, like a few elbows, they were somewhat glancing, nothing too damaging. And at some points, you could hear the crowd getting restless, and frankly, I was getting restless watching it. So even though they were saying afterwards, and they being John Jones, the commentators, everyone was saying this was a good learning experience for John Jones going the distance, I understand that, I guess. But I figured this is a guy who finishes people. He finishes former champions. Why not this time? And it just actually, as a side note, goes to show that MMA math does not work, because after this, I'm like, well, Lyoto Machida finished Rashad Evans. He knocked him out. Lyoto Machida, I feel, is the only guy who's won a round over Rashad Evans in their fight in December. So you'd think he'd be in the mix, but he just can't beat Shogun Hua, who John Jones made quick work of. So it just shows that MMA math. People try and say, well, if this guy beat that guy, then you should beat this guy, and that doesn't really work. But all the same, I thought it was pretty disappointing. Even Rashad Evans afterwards came out and said it sucked. But you thought that John Jones had a perfect game plan, so maybe you felt differently about the fight. So what'd you think?
Well, before I get into the fight, I don't get why Rashad Evans is being such a little bitch. I mean, I like Rashad Evans a lot, too. It's hard saying that. When you're in the same field as your guy, like you train together and you're in the same weight class, you're the champion, you got to expect him to come after you. That's when you fight. You become champion. When you don't fight to be a second-place guy because your best friend is a champion, all right, there are no Arn Andersons in the fucking MMA world. So I don't know why Rashad Evans was so pissed that the guy took the title shot and won the title. If I was John Jones, I'd say, yo, kiss my ass. I'm a professional. I want the belt. That being said, I think John Jones and Greg Jackson's game plan was perfect. Use your reach advantage, keep him at a distance so he can't shoot, and just watch out for his haymaker right hand. And Rashad only landed it twice in a 25-minute long fight. So I think his game plan was perfect. Don't let him shoot on you. Take away that complete aspect of the game, and just tag him and tag him and tag him and tag him. That's all he did in the whole fight. So I mean, a lot of people were bored of it. I didn't get bored at all because I could see what he was trying to do. And I was looking at like the chess match that it is. That he's going in there. He's going to execute his game plan, and he did to a perfection. He won. Yeah, you're not going to finish everybody. Oh, well. That way it can be finished. All right? Now, sometimes you just have to play it safe, and he played it safe and won. Some people are going to get disappointed. Fine. Yeah, there was some fireworks. Oh, fucking well. Not every fight is going to have fireworks or a broken arm or anything of the sort. Okay, sometimes you're gonna have these matches like this, but you know what? They're few and far between, and I liked it. And I liked it a lot.
Well, I mean, I'm not to say that or to give the impression that I think every fight should have fireworks either. I can appreciate a good chess match. I just felt that both guys were capable of better in this one. So I guess we disagree on how we were entertained, let's say, or enjoyed the fight. But to put it in perspective, kind of like what you were saying, Rashad Evans, it's hard to believe this was only his second loss. So maybe he still, like he said, has the potential to come back in. But I still feel like the Rashad that knocked out Chuck Liddell and won the title is kind of far gone at this point. But that being said, looking forward, I mentioned the heavyweight card coming up. And heavyweights have been all over the news in mixed martial arts, largely because of Alistair Overeem and his testosterone levels. That ended up costing him. And you can read the news about that on WrestlingRoundtable.com with the full details there. He came in with a 14-to-1 testosterone to epitestosterone level, and that jettisoned him out of the heavyweight title fight against Junior Dos Santos. So now Frank Mir, who I felt was a worthy contender beforehand, I thought him and Velasquez was exactly the fight that they should have lined up for the number one contendership, and that's what it was up until this, and now they bumped Mir up. Velasquez gets Bigfoot Silva. I think that's pretty appropriate since both are coming off big losses, one for the title, one in the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix. But Mir gets the shot now, so the Nevada State Athletic Commission just today, I believe, denied Alistair Overeem a license, and he's going to have to reapply sometime within the next 9 months or something like that. And some people are like, he could be fighting again by the end of the year in December or whatever, but I guess that remains to be seen. So that's one of our polls actually right now on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Who do you have, Junior Dos Santos or Frank Mir? So let's hear your thoughts, Will, on the next heavyweight title fight and Junior Dos Santos' first defense against that former champion, no less.
You know me, I'm a huge Alistair Overeem fan, not just because he's Dutch, because he's awesome. And but the fact that he got caught with steroids, I'm sorry, if anybody was shocked, he should be punched in the face.
Well, his testosterone levels were elevated. The details haven't come out exactly just yet. I think it was 14-to-1. But point is that his excuse was that it was medication assigned to him that had testosterone in it, and he didn't know about it.
Yeah, let me know what prescription he's taking, because seriously, I could bulk up a little bit too. I mean, but the least shocking steroid allegation since fucking Barry Bonds. Okay, seriously, people.
I thought you were going to say Cyborg.
I forgot about Cyborg, but Barry Bonds was a bigger thing because Barry Bonds was a huge baseball player while Alistair Overeem was huge internationally. But I'm not shocked, but at the same time I'm a little shocked that he's kept doing steroids after he was in UFC. I'm like, dude, it's not necessary. You're already that big. Just maintain, and you'll be fine. In fact, you can lose 10 pounds. He's still just as devastating. His game is stand-up, not so much what strength would really come into play as much. So, I mean, it was really pissing me off that he did it, but at the same time, I'm not shocked by it.
You don't think strength comes into play with strikes and kickboxing?
It's different between power and strength. Strength is more like stuff like you like pushing off someone or grabbing someone and hoping not being able to like have them get out of it. Power comes from more like using multiple muscles at one time. You don't necessarily need big muscles. In fact, it helps to have stretchy muscles instead of big muscles. That's why you never see a lot of fighters too bulky or too big because they have a hard time moving around and concentrating as well. So it pisses me off a lot, but he just really disappointed me. That being said, Frank Mir getting a title shot, I'm totally for it because you can't really give it to Cain Velasquez because then this would be a rematch, and you only want to do rematches if it was a close fight, and it wasn't close at all. It was a minute knockout. So I think Frank Mir should have got the shot. I mean, he look at the guys he's just beat. He beat Krokop, he beat Nelson, and he beat Nogueira. I mean, that's a pretty impressive list. You got two Hall of Famers on there and Roy Nelson. I love Roy Nelson. But I'm glad he's getting the fight. I'm not too thrilled with Bigfoot Silva getting a shot against Cain. I would like to see something a little bit better, but at this point, who's really left to fight? It's not that many guys who are not injured or ready to go right now. But Frank Mir getting a shot, I'm very happy about. I still think JDS is going to win, but Frank Mir would definitely give him a great shot.
Yeah, there was that campaign for Mark Hunt to get the shot because he's pretty much ready after his last fight. I understand the feel-good story behind it because this older fighter, I think he's 37, used to fight in K1. He came over with the Pride purchase, and they didn't want him, and he said, no. I won't take the buyout. I want to stay and fight, prove myself, and he's been doing that, and Dana White's been putting him over, and people wanted this to be the feel-good story for it, but Dana White's like, nah, I think he needs a couple more wins against key names for that to happen, and I could kind of understand that. So as much as I would have liked it, I understand the reasoning in not doing that. But like I said, we have a poll on Junior Dos Santos and Frank Mir right now on WrestlingRoundtable.com. There was a news update yesterday. You can sign up for the newsletter and get the news directly, along with a personal message and information from myself. That's the newsletter, and you can find out how to sign up over at WrestlingRoundtable.com. Hope you've been enjoying some of the exclusive matches that we've been uploading, and like I said, we will be taping on Sunday. But right now, we want to bring on some guests. I hope we got both of them, but I know I got at least one, and that's the Bravados. Are the Bravados there?
You've got both of them there. How you doing,
all right, excellent. So it's Harlem, and is it still Lancelot, or are we back to Lance?
Well, Lancelot's the name. You can call me Lance or Lancelot. You pick.
Lancelot was really starting to grow on me. I really like that one. I'm glad to have you guys on, especially now of all times, because you two are actually the next in line, because we've talked to Jenny Rose and Alex Payne since they came back from Japan, and now we like to add you guys to the list. And that's real exciting, but I want to backtrack a little bit and find out some more about you guys because, of course, we work together in Pro Wrestling Respect, and I put together the Bravados profile package. And if you haven't seen that, and you probably haven't, I'm going to just retread a little bit and find out a little more about you guys and what led to you going to Japan. So first, obviously, you guys grew up pro wrestling fans, and the area that you grew up in, and where exactly did you guys grow up?
We grew up in a small town. This is Harlem, by the way. Sorry if you can't distinguish the voices. But we grew up in a small town called Draper, North Carolina. It's right on the Virginia border in the middle of the state of North Carolina. Like you said, we grew up, obviously, Jim Cocker Promotions, WCW. It's always what our grandma watched. It's always what she had on. That was always, especially in that era, tag team wrestling was a huge deal. Some of our favorites, of all time are from that era just because that's what was on and that's what we paid close attention to. The Steiners, great in their day. Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, obviously, is the thing. Fantastic. We've seen all the greatest tag teams, when we were young, and we were just mesmerized by their teamwork and their ability. So,
the Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express matches are legendary from that time, but one of the big ones you guys didn't mention was the Road Warriors.
I do enjoy the Road Warriors, obviously, but like you said, there's so many great teams from that era. I mean, how can you can't mention them all? It's just everybody from that era was putting out great matches. The crowd reactions in tag team matches is unmatched from that era. The haircut and everything, man. I was a big Road Warriors fan.
Then you decided to make the leap. And how did you get started? Because I think a lot of people obviously heard of you first through Ring of Honor and the ROH Wrestling Academy, but you actually started wrestling before that. So how did that come about, Lance?
We attended an indie wrestling event in North Carolina. We'd never been to an indie show before, but we saw a flyer for it, and we were like, hey, it's close, let's go check it out. And we went, and we were like, hey, we want to be professional wrestlers. So they were like, well, come to the next show, help us set up the ring, and we'll train you. Well, we done that for a few months before we realized that the training wasn't quite what we were looking for. So that's when we decided to make the leap to the Ring of Honor Wrestling Academy.
Well, you guys did have a few matches, I believe, before you came up, right, Harlem?
Correct.
And what was it that made you feel like, well, obviously, as Lance mentioned, the training, but in these few matches you had, was it any sort of reflection on the quality of the shows, the promoters? What made you guys feel like you weren't reaching the goals that you wanted to, you weren't getting to the level that you felt you needed to, and made you head on up to Pennsylvania for the ROH school?
I guess it was really just us. You all, especially as a performer and as a professional, you always want more. You always want to challenge yourself. You always want to take the next step. It's not a knock on the promoters or the the shows or the quality of the shows. We just felt like there was more. There's more out there, and we felt like we could achieve more. So we realized that we had to, if you want it, you got to go out and get it. You can't just sit around and wait for something to happen. So that's what really, it was really just us pushing ourselves. That's what made us, enroll in the academy.
You're certainly not alone, because the ROH Wrestling Academy had lots of people who had already been in wrestling for various amounts of time who felt they needed to go to Ring of Honor. I guess it's got the reputation to be as such, but they wanted to go to the ROH Wrestling Academy to improve, sharpen their skills, get their foot in the door, and things of that nature. So when you guys did come up to the ROH Wrestling Academy, was the difference immediate? What was the big feeling that you got out of it compared to how you started? Was it more like what you envisioned?
Yeah. One thing obviously was the training. You have to be in shape as a professional wrestler. You can't do it if you're not in shape. It's one thing that I learned very quickly. We weren't in the best shape before we got there, but I felt like when you're surrounded by it, obviously, we took it another step further when we went to do the NOAA training, but once you're surrounded by it, it's a lot easier to buy in what people are saying. It's a lot easier to get in shape. It's a lot easier to diet. It's a lot easier when you're actually living the lifestyle. It's a lot easier to do that. So I think just by surrounding ourselves with the people, with the trainers, Delirious and David Hayes, it's easy to just push yourself a lot more when you're surrounded by, when you're in that environment. So I think that's really what helped us the most. Push us, keep ourselves in shape, to diet, to even hit the tanning bed. So.
Well, when you started wrestling for ROH, of course, we started seeing you guys doing preliminary matches before the show, and even at that part of the card, on that part of the show, was it a big step up from what you had done before? Were there bigger crowds? Was there any sort of anxiousness in the fact, or was there any pressure like, this is Ring of Honor, we want to make a good impression? How were your pre-show matches going, Harlem?
I felt like our pre-show matches were going well. It was obviously bigger crowds, a bigger environment, and I think pressure is something people kind of put in their heads. Like, I never felt any pressure. I knew that I had been equipped with the tools, to succeed. I know what I'm doing. I'm capable. I never feel any pressure, even from pre-show matches to main show matches to pay-per-view matches, TV matches. I never really put any pressure on myself because I know I'm capable. I think when you put pressure on yourself, you kind of set yourself up for failure.
Lance, is that something that you feel the same about, or do you differ with your brother here? Is there any difference in your mind mentally going from the house lights are up, the pre-show match is there, to maybe television where the house lights are down and there's a bigger potential audience for you to see? This is an important part of the card, or is it something that you just mentally block out and just concentrate on the goal that you need to do?
Now I'm a lot more comfortable, but I will say that a chat with my good friend Adam Pierce really helped make a difference for that. Back when we first started doing pre-show matches, I used to get kind of anxious because, it's not always just Academy people on pre-show matches. A lot of times it's other people from other promotions who, are trying to get a foot in the door. And sometimes it's a little, it made me a little anxious working with people I didn't know and things like that. But Pierce just let me know that, this is your home, this is where you train, this is where you are, every show. Like, so, there's not anything that you really need to worry about. He had a few more expletives in there, I believe, but pretty much that was the gist of it. And since then, we really consider Ring of Honor our home. You always are a little nervous. You have to be because it keeps you on the edge. But I don't have fear of going out and competing or anything like that.
You said that Ring of Honor you consider your home, and that's something I want to return to in a bit, because you guys are back in the United States, and that's very exciting. We missed you, that's for certain. But Harlem, I wanted to ask about, at this stage in your career, you're just about to get to Japan, you're trying to get your guy's name out there and get to that level. But just before that happened, you guys are starting to get bigger matches. You got, I thought, a really great gimmick, because it's almost like the tag team indie version of the Rocky Maivia effect, where you guys came in as baby faces, nothing too outlandish, nothing too big, I suppose, and I guess the fans just kind of started turning on it in a way, and then you guys just brilliantly, along with, of course, everyone you were working with to help guide things along, turned that around into this bravado bandwagon, and almost like you guys were kind of oblivious to your whole corny appeal, and it really worked well. And it seemed like you guys were starting to get something going with teams like the Young Bucks and other sort of teams on that level, which was really exciting before you went to Japan. So how did that affect your in-ring work? Was it a minor adjustment you had to make to go from a babyface to a heel sort of thing? How was the adjustment there, Harlem?
The adjustment was kind of easy because, honestly, that's just who we are. I mean, it's who we are. It's kind of funny that you compared it to the Rocky Maivia thing because me and my friend just recently watched the Rock documentary, and he commented on it and said, wow, it's kind of in the same vein as you guys. I don't think the transition has been that hard because it's who we are now. Maybe the people who we were trying to be at first wasn't who we are, but now we're comfortable because it's actually who we are. It's who Lancelot and Harlem. That's us. The whole bandwagon thing, the smiling, the joking, that's us. So it's pretty easy transition. And
it shows because it seems very natural. Like you were saying, it seems like you guys are a lot more comfortable doing it too. Like it just seems easier. Around this time, you were starting to get bigger matches. Were you guys wrestling a lot outside of Ring of Honor, Lance, at this time?
I guess you're referring to like the whole last year, like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, we've definitely been taking indie dates, outside of the Ring of Honor dates whenever we could. Last year we started working for Chikara. So, yeah, I mean, we just try to stay as busy as we can. I feel that we get more reps, in Ring of Honor than we do anywhere else. So I don't know how much our other indie dates have helped other than, just helping getting our name out there and, traveling to different markets where Ring of Honor may not have television and things like that.
So needless to say, up to this point at least, Ring of Honor was the highlight of your guys' career, no doubt.
Absolutely, yeah.
I did want to touch on, before we get to Japan, though, a little side note to Ring of Honor, because a lot of people who are fans of Wrestling Roundtable know that we were involved heavily with Pro Wrestling Respect. I was actually co-producer for those shows, and it was great working with you guys in that environment because the whole idea with Pro Wrestling Respect was to get a lot of these wrestlers who are newer to Ring of Honor and actually just fresh out of the school as well, or students who had come from the school, former students, more time to get their things in, if you want to put it that way, because a lot of them didn't get that in Ring of Honor, and a lot of them felt that we had more to offer. So it was on a much smaller scale, of course. This was the Burlington National Armory in front of a couple hundred people, maybe at best. So it was a little different environment. Is that something that's inviting to you guys? Because when we did the Wrestling Road Diaries, and we're actually going to talk about indie wrestling on Sunday when we tape with a panel of your peers, as I mentioned earlier in the show. It's an idea that I thought was really interesting when Bryan Danielson was talking on Road Diaries that, yeah, I'm going to go to WWE because it's big, it's money, it's great and everything, and it's, of course, a rush to be in front of all these people like we saw at WrestleMania 28 when he's coming out in front of 78,000 people. It's awesome, of course, but there is a fun aspect to indie wrestling, too, where he is doing a little show for CTWE in Connecticut or whatever, and you get that, quote, intimate atmosphere. And a lot of time people like to spin intimate atmosphere to mean euphemism for small crowd. But I think in a lot of cases it actually is, because you get to interact with people more directly and more openly than you could in a 78,000-seat arena. So did you have that sort of feeling with Pro Wrestling Respect, that it was definitely different than Ring of Honor in that respect, Lance?
Yeah, totally. It's very similar to a lot of the other indie shows that we do. But I appreciate the crowd. Even if it's 1,000 in Chicago or if it's 200 in Burlington. As long as they're there to have a good time, I can appreciate that. And it's a lot easier to give people an individual opportunity to react with matches and things like that and have a good time, in a small atmosphere. So I do agree, there's a rush to working for the bigger crowds, but, small crowds are great too. It's a lot more, like I said, intimate, a lot more crowd interaction. You can pretty much just speak to the people, and they hear you loud and clear. So it's something I enjoy a lot, yeah.
Now we get to the point, pretty much, Harlem, where you guys end up heading across the Pacific and going to Pro Wrestling Noah. Lots of other Ring of Honor wrestlers have appeared in Pro Wrestling Noah in the past and the present, actually. but this was your first time going overseas, and wow, where to even begin on such an experience? Firstly, how did it come about?
Anybody who kept up with Ring of Honor, late last year, we kind of went on a bit of a skid. We built up a little bit of momentum. We got some wins over Colin O'Reilly. We got some wins over the Briscoes. And we kind of dropped a few here in the later part of the year. We started hearing rumblings of the pressure was on if we didn't start winning some big matches. Maybe Ring of Honor make us take some time off, maybe train harder, spend more time in the academy, whatever the case may be. But we didn't really know. So we started reaching out to a lot of different companies, not to say that we had given up on Ring of Honor, but when that's put in your head, you just kind of, that was the only time in my career where I felt pressure. Honestly, we were talking about that earlier, but we didn't get the wins. We got some matches versus the Young Bucks, and Colin O'Reilly on pay-per-view. We lost that match. We were on the very first Ring of Honor TV against Colin O'Reilly. We lost that match. We came back on the next TV versus the Young Bucks. We lost that match. Then we lost versus, Caprice Coleman and Cedric Alexander, who were brand new to the company at that time. We just couldn't get it quite together. And then the final straw was at Final Battle. We also lost the All Night Express. And, after that match, we considered that was going to be our big win. That's going to get us back on track. And we dropped that one in Greensboro, North Carolina, which kind of hurt. But then they said the final straw was going to be a Final Battle. If we didn't win the tag team elimination match involving, all the teams that we had just mentioned, Colin O'Reilly, the Young Bucks, the All Night Express, and Caprice and Cedric, that we might be gone.
Thanks for chiming in. So basically, when that happened, we were reaching out, and actually our friend Chris Hero was able to put in a word for us with Noah. They told us to send over some tapes and things, and they were very excited, to have us come over. So that's pretty much how that got set up for us.
I believe there was a DVD, not tapes, but we know all about that, don't we? But
very talented producer on that.
You guys ended up getting the nod, and you went over to the Pro Wrestling Noah dojo and got on lots of shows. But one thing that is a common theme from everyone we've talked to who's gone to Japan, how much harder the training is. Is that what you guys experienced?
Absolutely. I mean, the training was insane. In our personal experience, there was one young boy that Noah had over there at the time. We were training with him, so we were training 6 days a week. We were off on Sundays, unless there was a show on Sundays, in which case you still trained. I'm definitely can say without a doubt I'm in the best shape of my career at this point. Since we've been back, we've actually been keeping up the exercises, keeping up the routines. So we're definitely in the best shape of our lives, and it's thanks, to all of the trainers, to Aoki-san and Shiozaki-san. They just showed us. It felt like everything they knew because the training was just so extensive. I mean, we would get up, we would be up at 9 o'clock. We'd clean the dojo. Everything we had to do, go upstairs, clean the dojo. We'd train 1 hour just straight calisthenics, body weight exercises, things of that nature. Then we'd spend the next 2 hours in the ring training. So by far the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life.
What was going to your first show in Japan like, Lance? This is, I guess, culture shock for you guys, Draper, North Carolina. Now you're in Japan, and for one of the big companies over there, too. Was it something just different than anything you'd experienced before?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was really blown away. The first match I had was in, the legendary Cork and Hall. And I was competing against Kanemaru, who's a multi-time GHC junior heavyweight champion. So, it was a big test. But, the crowds over there are great. They're really welcoming. They're just so respectful and, just so happy to be there. And, I mean, they just, you never hear them complain or moan or anything, kind of like sometimes the American crowds can be. They're just very excited to, have new guests into the country and have new people come over. So it was a blast, man. It was really, surreal being in the same locker room with people like Akiyama, who's, Triple Crown champion for All Japan right now, and, these people that I've watched on tapes, over the years. It was really crazy, but it was a fantastic experience, to say the least.
Your first match was in Cork and Hall. That is really cool. As a side note on Cork and Hall, I've been meaning to say this to our fans because I know I try and give coverage for all of pro wrestling. It doesn't have to be just domestic. It can be international. I try and cover all around the world when I do these news updates, and it seems like when I do these results, like every other day there is a show in Cork and Hall. Like people can talk about Madison Square Garden and all these other buildings in America that have a lot of shows, even on a small scale, like the former ECW Arena or whatever. But I think right now, if you're a wrestling fan, the wrestling capital of the world has got to be Cork and Hall in Tokyo, Japan, because sometimes there's multiple promotions doing shows on the same day. Like Michinoku Pro will tear down and then Noah will show up, that sort of thing. And then the weekend comes and there's a whole different lineup of people. Cork and Hall is really happening. It's like, I know CMLL does shows in Arena Mexico and there's AAA that, and like they run every week. But geez, just for the amount of variety, Cork and Hall, if you're a wrestling fan, you might want to just like camp out there. There's going to be something for you like almost every day. So that's something to take note of. But back to you guys and Noah, it seemed like they split you guys up a lot and you were doing a lot of singles matches. How did you take to that, Harlem?
It was different. I mean, I welcome it. You need experience at all levels. We're obviously, tag team wrestlers, that's what we prefer, but we welcome the experience of stepping there one-on-one. Like Mesla said earlier, we each got to wrestle Akiyama. At one point, I was supposed to wrestle Kobashi, but it was after all together when he got hurt. So that must have been heartbreaking. It's very heartbreaking. You couldn't even imagine. But the match they got replaced with, it was another match versus. It was either another match versus Yone-san or another match versus Kotora-san, which is, I think, two of my favorite opponents. So I was heartbroken, but at the same time, I was like, okay, at least I get to wrestle these guys again. Segura was probably, my favorite opponent the whole time I was over there. We had, I think, 2 tag matches and 2 singles matches with him, and all of them I learned so much wrestling Segura, just as far as ring presence, as far as just everything. I mean, I think he's really, really, really good. But not wrestling Kobashi, I wish that could have happened.
Well, hopefully you guys will get another tour and there'll be another chance.
I hope so.
Lance, how about you? Was there any standout guys that you worked with, or are there any standout matches that you had that you really took something from?
Well, someone he mentioned a minute ago, Torres Suzuki. I mean, he's one half of the GHC Junior Tag Champions right now, along with Aoki. But he's, probably right up there as one of the top juniors in the world, and I got the opportunity to have a couple of singles matches with him that I was very proud of. And then, like you said, Segura. I mean, Segura was probably the toughest guy. Either Segura or Akiyama, the 2 toughest guys I wrestled on the whole tour. But I was proud of the matches I had with Segura as well. But, I mean, it was just, I enjoyed all my matches over there. I mean, it was just such a great experience. The guys are just so talented and just so... I can't even really put it into words, but the style is just so much more physical, and I really think that helped add an element to our game that, may have been lacking before. So that's something that I plan on bringing back to the States with us.
Before we jump back to the States, I wanted to ask about Diamond Ring, because I saw that you guys got your, I think, only win, but first win, at least in a 6-man tag, I believe it was, with Kensuke Sasaki. Diamond Ring used to be Kensuke's office, which is, of course, affiliated with Noah. Is Diamond Ring, would it be inappropriate to say it's kind of like the respect of Noah?
Not quite. They use guys from also like Dragon Gate. It's hard to say. Like they do a lot of dojo shows. They also use they use the dojo shows and the smaller venue shows to build like bigger shows like at Cork and Hall. Like I think on the Cork and Hall show they have while we were there, Kobashi and Akiyama were on those shows. It's similar, but definitely not the same.
Well, how was your teaming with Kensuke Sasaki? That's got to be one of the big names that you worked with, and it seems like a lot of guys who go over to Japan, like you guys, Alex Payne, work with a lot of the big names, so it's a little different than when you're just starting out with Ring of Honor. You don't necessarily get in there with the big names right off the bat, but boom, you're in there with Segura and Akiyama and those sort of things. It's like a way to make you step up, I guess, so that's really cool. But you got the victory with Kensuke Sasaki, so was it cool to really team with this famous Japanese legend together?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's been the Triple Crown, the GHC, and the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. It doesn't really get any bigger than that. That wasn't a dojo show. That was one of the bigger shows. So that was a good feeling as well. And the reactions that he gets in Noah are almost completely different than the reactions he gets in Diamond Ring. And Diamond Ring it's unbelievable. He gets reactions like Stone Cold would in '98. I mean, it's unbelievable how big he is in Diamond Ring. Like, the people just come to see Kensuke almost. So that was really cool to be, to team with him and get kind of that rub, I guess.
Lance, you guys are back in America now, and I believe, was your comeback match with Chikara, or did you have one before that?
No, our first match back was in New Jersey in Chikara last week, yes.
At the Rahway Rec Center on that double shot with JPW, correct?
Correct.
And how was it to be back in America? This is not for Ring of Honor, that is coming up, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you're back with Chikara and back in America. So what was it like coming back? I know when some people come back from Japan, there is some pressure that they put on themselves because they feel like, well, everyone's looking at us now like we've got to have improved 100% because we went to Japan, and Japan has to have improved us a lot. So was there any of that pressure there, or was it just another night for the Bravados?
To be honest, I didn't really feel a lot of pressure. I mean, we have been, we're pretty much fresh back, and, we've been wrestling matches 5 or 6 days a week, some weeks, more so than any other time. I'm in wrestling mode, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just ready to go out there and just give everything that I have every night. So, no, I didn't really feel any pressure. I was excited. The bandwagon was in full effect. I was ready to get out there and just be out there with the peeps and just show them what we had picked up. They seemed very happy to see us. I was very happy to see them. So, no, I didn't really feel a lot of pressure at all. I was just really excited to be able to show off what we had learned.
You guys want to take a couple calls?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, before we do that, the Bravados are going to be back with Ring of Honor, and when and where and how can we find out about tickets?
This coming weekend, we will be in Chicago for the Synergy event, which is Chikara Pro and Ring of Honor both have shows that day in the Chicago Ridge Rec Center, I believe, or Chicago Ridge Fieldhouse.
Frontier Fieldhouse, yes.
I believe you can get tickets for the Chikara show, which is in the afternoon at chikarapro.com, and you can get tickets for the Ring of Honor show at ROHWrestling.com.
Our matches in Chikara, we're part of the 8-man tag. It's us and Jacob Hammermeyer and Sam Johnson teaming up against Ultramanus Black, Hal Wickett, and 3.0. And, we got a little unfinished business with 3.0, but we'll talk about that at a later time. And then our big Ring of Honor return is going to be a match that night against the Young Bucks.
That should be good. Want to get out and see the Bravados come back to Ring of Honor. That should be exciting. So let's go to Erin in Maryland. You are on with the Bravados.
Hey, yo, what's up, guys? What's up, my Bravados? How y'all doing?
I'm good.
You guys did really good over in Japan. I wish you guys worked with one of my favorites over in Big Japan, over guys like Daisuke Sekimoto, because that guy is getting really, really good nowadays. And I just wish you guys could have worked with him because he is a really good competitor.
I agree. He's very awesome. I saw him and Chris Hero actually in Philadelphia last year. It was one of the best matches I've seen live. He is a tremendous athlete, I agree.
Yes, indeed, he is. As a matter of fact, I want to recommend the matchup just to see. It's one of my favorite matches this year. Recommend if you go on a Smart Mark Video and purchase the WXW 16 karat gold tournament, especially look at the Night 3 8-man tag. It was Big Ben Walter, Sekimoto himself, Two-Face, and Kim Ray against Team Axeman Yoshio Sasaki, also works for Big Japan, and Carson Beck and Robert Dressiker in an 8-man elimination tag. And I've been telling you guys that if you're ever gets to see the Big Japan elimination tags, because I be telling you, because chest be coming out really rad at this because they work stiff. And I know a lot of Japan, the guys work really stiff with each other, but Big Japan, oh my lord, man, they go really stiff.
You have anything else for the Bravados, Erin?
Hopefully, your Ring of Honor return when we face the Young Bucks and face off against Ultra Madison 3.0 in the 8-man tag in Chicago. Hopefully, you guys do come out really good, because I do believe that you're one of the best tag teams in North America going today.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your support.
All right, Justin from Eagle, Wisconsin, you are on.
Eric, hey, Bravado Brothers.
What's up, man?
From the few matches I've watched from both, like, wrestling and MMA, Japanese fans tend to react differently to the action. Here in America, they tend to be a bit louder and more rowdier, while over there, they're like, more polite. They, like, tend to stand and clap rather than cheer and start loud chants. Was that, or, like, the audiences and crowds, like, different to get used to? Were there, like, reactions that, like, make you feel a bit off, or was it, like, didn't bother you at all, and was it an easy transition?
This is Harlem. I can only speak for myself, but it didn't really throw me off that much. It felt like the attention was on me, and that's, I don't know, that just caused me to focus more and perform harder, I guess. So there are times during the match when they will, they'll come up, and when they do come up, you hear them. But I wouldn't say that a lot of people think that they just sit on their hands, they don't really make a lot of noise. That's not true. Later on in the matches, especially when you're in the ring, you feel the crowd just the same way you feel the American crowd. It just takes a little bit longer for them to warm up throughout the match.
This was an awesome interview, guys, so thank you so much for calling in, and tell you what, sometime I'd love to have you guys on and do a panel for Wrestling Roundtable. How about that?
Thank you very much. We would love to.
That sounds great, Eric. We look forward to it.
All right, well, thanks a lot, guys. Best of luck returning to Ring of Honor this weekend in Chicago. So if you hate indie wrestling and only watch what's on TV, the wait is over, because we're going to move on to WWE and get back to some mainstream stuff. But it's good to talk about the indies and find out what else is out there. So, Will Brooks, some of the big stories in the past couple weeks, I wanted to at least touch on Brock Lesnar's video package from last week. Now, of course, last night was the contract signing and the stare down with John Cena and demanding all this stuff, Raw starring Brock Lesnar, et cetera, et cetera. But what really sold me on this pay-per-view Sunday was the awesome video package they did last week. Now, they did a sort of reintroduction video that was on YouTube. Really wish it would have aired on TV because it was awesome. And, of course, there were some parts of me that was watching this and seeing the great run that he had a few years ago, thinking, yep, everything that was awesome then is exactly why it's not awesome now, for the most part. But it was a good video on YouTube to reintroduce newer fans, or to introduce newer fans on who Brock Lesnar is, because a lot of these people weren't watching 9 years ago, per se. Some younger kids may not know. Maybe they just heard of him from UFC. That's how new they are. But Brock was really so good. We just covered his career, in fact, on one of our recent shows, at least up to this point, before he came back to WWE. And I really feel that if this guy had stayed around, he would have ended up being one of the greats of all time. He learned and got good so fast. The 2 years or so he was on TV, man, his absence was sorely missed. I know a lot of people stopped watching after he was there, after he left. I know there's probably a lot more factors that go into it than just that, but that's pretty much how it went. And man, this guy was a true total package. As good as Kurt Angle was in almost every aspect, the difference was Brock Lesnar had the size. He was a big man who was agile and could do all these amazing high spots, just not when it counted at WrestleMania 19, I guess. But if you've seen OVW shots and the dark matches that he did, you saw what he was really capable of, and it is fucking amazing. This guy could do technical wrestling, he could do brawling, he could match up against any opponent. This is why I really feel if he had stuck around, we'd still be talking about him in the upper echelon of some of the greats of all time. So that video package I was referring to was on YouTube, but the one I wanted to mention was last week, and that really sold me on this pay-per-view. Going into this match with Cena, I was like, okay, I'm interested just to see Brock's first match back. Cool, But part of me is like, we all know there's not going to be a finish. I mean, if there is, Brock's winning. But otherwise, I fully expected some sort of non-finish. I mean, it's in Chicago, so they could kind of make up for it with Punk in the main event as the champion, but they'd rather have Brock in there. So if there was going to be a finish, if any, it's definitely him winning. He's certainly not going to lose to Cena this soon. But this video package put that out of my mind. And you know which one I'm talking about. It's the one where he was sitting down doing sound bites, and wow, that sold it so well. It was very actually not like WWE. It was in more of the spirit of UFC's video packages, and it's had more of that real feel. This whole, he would never have been the guy if I had stayed around, and we hate this PG bullshit. I mean, I'd pop for him kicking the hat that was on the canvas after EF5 Cena the day after WrestleMania 28. That was awesome. And that's, I guess, how far gone things have gotten. I'm popping for him kicking a baseball cap. I mean, really, that's edgy now.
I did too, though. I popped for that too. It was great. It was a great,
it was awesome.
Moment.
But yeah, this package, I especially love that slow motion of the F5 with you hearing that noise. Kind of reminded me of the Dark Knight trailer when the truck is going over on top of itself from the cable and then the fast crash. I was just in awe of how awesome that package was. And after it was over, I was like, I'm sold. So how excited are you, Will, in light of the build the past couple weeks for Brock and Cena?
Well, anytime you got Brock Lesnar and versus or in anything, I'm excited because it's Brock Lesnar. We'll never get tired of this guy. He's too great. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like that promo package was great. His intro was great. The thing I like, and punching Brock Lesnar, John Cena in the mouth was awesome. And they actually showed blood on TV. It was, wow, it's different. One thing I didn't like last night, though, when it was doing the contract signings, that's on his manage, that's fine, whatever, I don't care. But when Cena came out and they were staring down, Cena signed the contract and then threw it at Brock, and Brock just got in a fighting stance, like he's ready to start swinging. Instead of doing that, I would have really preferred if you just looked at Cena and said, I'm going to kick your ass, and then walked out. To me, that would have been so much better. Because it just would have fit everything that was already going on. Brock Lesnar is an animal, is a beast. Cena, you got nothing for him. We know that, you know that. Good luck tomorrow, man. You're getting your ass kicked. They should have went a little bit more simplistic with it, but other than that, it's great. I can't wait for Sunday.
Royce in Pomona, California, you're on the roundtable.
Oh, yeah, I just kind of want to talk about, of course, Brock. And I kind of want to relay this back to the promo last week, which I also thought was really good. But I want to take it back to that the promo video you did a few weeks ago, or released a few weeks ago, and you said something about Sid, like you said Tate Sid was better than live Sid, and I have to put it
apply that to Brock.
Brock, because yesterday's promo was pretty long and rambly, except for the whole Monday Night Raw featuring Brock line, which I thought was good. It just seemed pretty bad. Like his voice isn't that like the Bobby Lashley effect. Like his voice isn't that intimidating. It just seemed like, really, let's go. Come on, just keep it short. Like edit it down or something. And I also want to ask, do you think that since Brock is back and they're really acknowledging his UFC championship reigns and stuff like that, you think they're gonna kind of do with him like they did with Shamrock and kind of maybe do these kind of MMA-esque fights with him? Maybe not a lions-den match, but something along the lines of that with worked MMA fights or MMA rules.
I sincerely doubt it. Well, I mean, technically Shamrock started as a pro wrestler, but that was on a scale no one saw. So everyone, when he came to prominence, knew him as an MMA fighter. Brock started as a wrestler. He started as a WWE wrestler, too. So as good as he was, and I know a lot of people have been wondering about ring rust, and if you can afford me an aside here, and I'll get back to your question, but if I can have a little aside, as far as Brock and his shape in the ring. First of all, to get to ring rust, now, granted, yes, he hasn't had a pro wrestling match in probably 8 years since IGF. for Inoki in Japan when he lost to Angle, like just before he started his MMA career. Fine. So he hasn't been doing that. But you know what? I had the same argument when The Rock came back, actually just before Survivor Series. Everyone's wondering, oh, he's going to be rusty. And even he goes in through WrestleMania, people are like, oh, he didn't look that good. But I thought the match was fine, if not good. And what I had to say then, I'll reemphasize now. When you become a pro wrestler, this is drilled into your head. You do countless bumps, countless hours in the ring, running the ropes, knowing how to do every move, knowing how to move. Everything is drilled into your head before your first match, at least if you're in a fucking scrupulous place and they do it properly. So, in a way, it's kind of like riding a bike. I don't think you're really going to forget that. There is that muscle memory there. Let alone if you're a top-level fucking athlete like Rock and Brock are, or were, or whatever you want to say. And they performed on a top level for years. So I don't think it's going to be a disaster. And if he does have some ring rust, quote-unquote, and he lost a step and all that shit, he's in there with John Cena. And say what you will about John Cena, but this is a guy who carried Great Khali years ago to a watchable match and had matches with people who, frankly, you'd expect the match to suck, and they didn't. So say what you will about Cena as a worker or whatever the fuck. I think he's in good hands here. I don't think it's going to be bad. But one thing that really annoys me is when people started criticizing Brock when he showed up the day after WrestleMania as not being in WWE shape or in ring shape or whatever, because he's what? Not fucking overly roided and muscled up pre-wellness policy. I mean, you look at the way Brock Lesnar was back then and the way he looks now. I mean, maybe he's not in fighting shape like he would be for a UFC fight, but he clearly lost some muscle mass to a degree, or at least stopped retaining water. He wasn't nearly as monstrous cut looking. I mean, he's still a huge guy. I mean, the way I compare it is when Hulk Hogan got off the juice in like 1993 during the height of the steroid scandal, for a couple of years there, it was pretty clearly obvious that he was not juicing, and he got a lot smaller visibly. But you know what? You take that away, and he's still a huge fucking guy. He's still a big, muscular, 6'3" guy. So I look at Brock like that, and when people are like, "Oh, look at Brock, he looks horrible. He's not in shape. He's not in ring shape." First of all, what the fuck do you know about ring shape? Ring shape is something completely different than what you think it is. Being in ring shape, you could look like Samoa Joe and still be able to have that specific kind of cardio. Doing ring drills and exercises is completely different than doing road work and other sort of things that you might think. So just because someone looks a certain way doesn't mean they're in bad ring shape. That's first. Well, there you go. That's first of all. And second of all, so everyone saying Brock is not in shape is really saying, in my interpretation, we want all our guys on steroids. People can say all they want, oh, they're on steroids and it's bad and blah, 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 but then on the next breath say that are not in ring shape. Like I said, when Brock was in WWE the first time, this was before the wellness policy. That's been, of course, on and off for several years, depending on what's going on politically at the time. But it's obvious to people with eyes and brains who's on the juice and who's not. And even then, people can't really tell. There's lots of, let's say, cruiserweight-size guys who people don't think it would be on the juice, because the juice, you look at pre-93 Hogan, like let's say 88, 90, he's retaining water. He looks like a giant, veiny hot dog. He's just this huge muscular mass. It's kind of obvious most of the time. So that's what people think of when they think of WWF wrestlers and ring shape and blah, blah, blah. So I thought it was kind of bullshit that people were like, oh, he's not in ring shape because his fucking trapezius muscles aren't covering up his ears. I think Brock will be just fine. But something tells me you wanted to chime in on that, Will.
Yeah, people equate steroids to big muscles. It's not exactly what steroids does. Steroids is just what it does is makes you have great recovery so you can work out 2 or 3 times a day. That's how you get big muscles. Not because you know, oh, you put this in a salt, oh, you put this in your body, also you do a couple curls and you got muscles. No, you still have to work your ass off. You know?
Right. I mean, there's guys who go on the juice and don't do anything about it. And, I mean, yeah, they get size and some back knee depending on what kind of juice they get. But the guys who are really jacked have to work at it.
Yeah. But also, like, remember, Sin Cara got caught with steroids. You know, he wasn't big by any means. It's, again, like you said, it's all about, are you cardiovascularly? Are you okay? Can you remember your bumps? And can you remember your timing? That's ring shape.
Back to your question, Royce, I really don't see that happening where they're going into, let's say, a worked shoot sort of match. I guess the most modern comparison for American fans would be the Joe Angle lockdown match a few years ago. But, of course, as you mentioned, WWE would do something like that back in 97 and into 98, with the Lion's Den and Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, et cetera, but I think this time, even though they have mentioned that he is a former UFC champion, they've shown pictures and et cetera, I think the most we'll see is a couple spots, like maybe that double leg where he potatoed Cena in the mouth and made him a little bloody, maybe a submission or something, although Brock doing a submission is kind of funny. I know he won with a head and arm triangle against Shane Carwin, but I would love to see John Cena win in like 8 seconds on Sunday with a knee bar, Frank Mir style. But I really don't see them going that route. But I mean, the possibility is certainly there. I just don't get the feeling that they'll do it. I more see a typical WWE style main event. Ramon in Chicago, you are on the roundtable.
Good evening, Eric.
Hey, Ramon, what is on your mind?
Well, I was watching the last segment of Raw, and I was just thinking that whole promo that he did, that kind of could make Lesnar seem like public enemy number one to like everybody in the locker room. So am I the only one who thinks that the Lesnar-Cena match is going to end with like a bunch of guys just jumping Lesnar, and that's how Cena ends up winning?
I don't get that feeling, especially if Johnny Ace has anything to say about it. What do you think, Will?
I see Laurinaitis getting involved somehow, but I think it's going to be a no contest anyway.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of stupid for an Extreme Rules match to end in a no contest.
Eugene in Detroit. You're on the round table, Eugene.
Well, hello. Y'all gotta excuse my voice, but I just got off work, so my voice is a little hoarse right now.
Is it hoarse from screaming at Raw last night?
I've never been to a Raw where yes was said in like so many different languages, but I called because of what I had said on the Facebook group earlier.
Yes, and I asked for you to call because I can't believe this story, and I'd love to hear you explain it for the record, so to speak. So let's hear it.
All right. When you go to events in Detroit, for some weird reason, we don't get standard security and all this stuff. We get, like, super security and, like, other guys that come in or whatever. So I have my sign, Wrestling Roundtable logo, copied and put on the poster board and going in. And, you know, it's kind of like being at the airport. You kind of get taken off to the side. And so the guy's like looking at me, checking me, and he sees my sign. So he starts looking at my sign. First sign was the Wrestling Roundtable sign. He looks at it, and then he shows me this. He has this clipboard. And on the clipboard, he's looking through, like he's literally looking through names. So I'm like wondering, okay, I'm not personally on the list. So he out of nowhere just says your name. He says Eric Santamaria, and I'm like, okay. I started getting a little creeped out. I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on?
Wait, did he ask if you were Eric Santamaria?
He just said your name.
Okay.
He just said your name like just random. So I'm looking like, no, I'm not Eric Santamaria. I show my ID. He says, okay. Passes the sign off to associate. Associate starts ripping it. He didn't even know what it was. He just said, this whatever. He's like, I'm ripping your sign because we're not promoting. He's like, we're not going to promote non-WWE things on the show. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird because I've seen, there are kids that got signed. There are kids that are literally passing through with some of the stuff from Botchamania, and even have, one kid actually went through with a Cornette face. Now, Cornette is running, Ring of Honor? So, the kid got through with the Cornette face, but I get singled out for Wrestling Roundtable, so I just kept thinking, okay, he's not going to let me in. I'm going to probably have to forfeit my ticket. He was like, I'm going to let you in. He rips up my other 2 signs. He's like, we don't need no promotion of anything that's not WWE related. Again, I'm pointing to the kid that's on to my left, that's a Cornette face. And the guy just kind of shrugs, I don't know what that is. But
maybe the other guys letting those people in didn't have the clipboard. They didn't get the memo.
Right. I the guy that was behind me was like, I've heard of DWB, but damn, I never thought that you could just be WB. I'm like, and I looked at him, I was like, well, you know what? I was like, at least I didn't get kicked out. So I got to sit down, watch most of Raw because, of course, I had to sit near a whole bunch of kids, and oh my God, let's just say I learned that if I'm going to sit somewhere, I'm going to sit with grown-ups, because sitting with a bunch of kids, that was just like Cena, that was literally mini Cena Nation. But I wanted to call because I wanted to say, in a sense, it was funny to me personally that I brought in a offensive sign, and second of all, I was trying to support Wrestling Roundtable, and in the process, you get called out, and Wrestling Roundtable get called out, but yet I'm pointing to the little kid that got Cornette face supporting Botchamania. So, but the funny thing is that they mentioned Botchamania on WWE TV.
There's a lot to say. First of all, I appreciate the sentiment and the idea of supporting Roundtable by trying to bring the sign there. I've been waiting for a Roundtable sign to show up on Raw sometime, but I just still have a hard time, I guess, believing it. And I know, and then you've stuck to your guns. You've been consistent with it. I personally have a hard time. What do you think, Will?
Well, Eric, didn't they contact you after the first season about the background or whatever?
No, they didn't contact me. I just got a fucking flag message. Now, what happened was in our first season, which was back in 2008, around the summer, I'd say in August, all of a sudden I get an email that one of our videos has been taken down. It was flagged by WWE. What we used to do, and this is why a lot of the first season is not on YouTube, and the stuff that is blurred, WWF logo style, because I made an error. In the back of my head, I knew I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have given them enough rope to hang me with, but I would use pictures from magazines and stuff in the background during the show. And when they flagged one of our videos, and the video in question is particularly interesting, but the one that got flagged, it said the reason was WWE has filed a copyright claim for some or all of the video content. Of course, it would be some in this case, and it was the video/audio. And the only thing it could be is their pictures. So what I can surmise from this is some fucking intern in Connecticut in Titan Towers was probably scanning YouTube and went, wow, these guys are reaming us bad. What can we... Oh, there's a picture, and it worked. So I did not want to risk everything I had built being destroyed because they take down even more. So as a precautionary measure, I took them down. I re-edited some of them with the logo and everything. It's a very fucking long process, so that's why I haven't gotten to most of the rest of it. But all of them are at least available on Blog Talk Radio and iTunes in their full form audio-wise. So if you want to listen to any show, actually, we've ever done, they're over there. But, yeah, so that was the first time. I haven't heard anything since. In fact, I mean, I've got some guys that I would say I'm friendly with that work over there, and I haven't heard anything along those lines. So, I mean, it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility, but the whole thing of mentioning it by name just really throws me, Eugene.
Well, how do you think I feel? I'm standing there. I'm thinking it's just gonna be a warning or just just a little chastised. But oh no, I got like the full lecture. It was like the quickest but scariest lecture. It's like clipboard, pointed, everything. I mean, all I needed, it didn't really help that there were a lot of, well, if you saw Raw, you saw that there was even police involvement in one of the segments. But but it was just there was so much police there that it was kind of funny to me. I'm thinking, okay, one fine, maybe, slap on the wrist, whatever. I felt like I was about to get arrested until the guy was like, okay.
Because of me?
Because I didn't, like I said, I went by myself, which, I'm learning. Last time I went to Raw, I was with group, so I should have learned that if I'm going to go next time, I'm going to go with people. That way, in case this happens again, I have more witnesses. And the only guy that kind of could vouch for me is a guy that he travels with WWE. He goes to like different events. Like he went to Detroit. He came to the one in Detroit, and I think he went to the SmackDown taping, which is on the other side of Michigan. For that would be shown on Friday. But he's the only other person who could pretty much vouch for what occurred, and or exception of the security, the guy in question. I mean, I'm more so questioning who he was, but I learned
he was probably just building staff.
Oh no, he wasn't building staff. I know most of the guys that work at where Raw was at, which was Joe Arena. Mm-hmm. That wasn't off staff. That was a legitimate private security, because even the police officer that was near the area basically said that was personal security. So I'm wondering, maybe you might have not thought that one little video wasn't was done in the past, because I've learned that things like that at WWE events don't go away that easily.
Well, maybe it's like trying to get through the Canadian border and they hold you up for something that happened 10 years ago on your record.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, it's been a little while, and I can't imagine why WWE would be upset, because, I mean, it's not like I do a show where I criticize every little thing they do every time. Oh, wait, it is. And call them out on killing Owen Hart and steroids and all the other political bullshit that they do. I can't imagine why they would be upset with me.
And see, now the thing is that they have my name. And the hilarious part is that, my little, now I got to be paranoid not only for Wrestling Roundtable, but I got to be paranoid for my own stuff. I know that if they look at videos, I know they scour blogs. So it's like, oh, my God, I got to pray that I don't have some creepy guy sending me a message talking about, we're kicking out your blog because it offends us.
I had no intention of getting you in any trouble, Eugene, and you said, I think even in the group of last week, that you were going to make a sign. I was like, that's really cool, and I guess it led to this, and I would love to see that clipboard.
I learned many years ago when it comes to security, especially with events in Detroit, the day you touch a clipboard will be the same day you will be sitting in the holding cell next to, a drug dealer, a child molester, and some guy who just happened to sell crack to a cop.
So I'm not saying grab the clipboard, but there is a cell phone camera around, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do, and that was why the cop was standing there like, well,
I know. I'd assume that would happen.
Yeah, believe me, I was trying to get some kind of proof, but I was like, go to jail or pray that I can get to the seat.
Well, today was a big day for me. I found out I'm on an exclusive list. Signs like Macho Man and Lord Tensei get taken away, along with Wrestling Roundtable, apparently. And my name in particular is on an exclusive list with, like, Chris Benoit and George Saharian.
Yeah, so in a way, in WWE circles, you're the person that, he who we do not mention.
Well, I'm certainly not that fucking bad, but... like I said, I mean, I've talked to people who are in WWE, and they haven't said a word. Like, hey, guess what? So that's news to me. But also news to me today was I found out I have an IMDb profile, which I didn't fucking know. So I found out I'm on WWE shit list and on IMDb. So that's pretty cool. But I'm glad you called in anyway, not just to elaborate on that story, because I still have a hard time fathoming that little old me. But I mean, all I'm concerned about is with the truth, and I just call it as I see it and whatever. But I wanted to hear how you thought Raw was.
Last time I went to Raw was kind of ironic. Okay, Brock Lesnar, John Cena. Last time I went, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, just in
so
different
it's been a long
roles.
time.
Yes, it's been a long time. And usually I don't go to WWE events solely because I always end up sitting somewhere crappy, and I always end up being surrounded by people who would have no problem falling out of their seats. But, I won't elaborate on that. But anyways, but most of the show was okay. There was two things that happened, both while the show was going on and while they were doing the commercials. And one of the things is that kids and King's Pyros do not mix. I kid you not. That was probably one of the funniest things, being next to three kids that were under 5, and then here comes King's Pyro, that loud boom.
Scared the shit out of them.
Right. And then, not to mention, and I kind of put this in my blog, but there was a lady that was sitting by, 2 rows up. She was wearing white jeans and white pants. When that top went, let's just say she got up and she squirted, and I'm just going to leave it at that. So I'm just going to give you the picture of seeing a grown woman walk away in her white pants with a stain.
You don't need to elaborate anymore. When I hear there was a pop, she got up and squirted, I know exactly what you mean. Oh yeah, you're talking about wrestling.
Yeah, the most craziest thing. It came out. I'm not one of the people that I know who's going to come on the show or whatever. But when Edge came out, Edge probably got a louder pop than CM Punk, and it was just deafening. And when Edge left, it was just like he came, he said his piece, walked right up the ramp. Pop. As soon as he went through the curtains, that pop disappeared. Silence. That was probably the best. Well, that and seeing CM Punk, trying to do a breathalyzer test, but that the chance there was well, I can't say it on the radio, but it was basically.
Of course you can. This is Wrestling Roundtable. You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Well, I mean, when CM Punk was getting the whole little drunken test, there was a section over there talking about I don't know how to say it, but it was something that had to do with what's going on in the city of Detroit, and it was kind of funny because it was you got 2 cops, these 2 supposed Detroit police, which I've come to find out one of them was actually a cop. The other guy was a security guard. They just threw a cop uniform on at the last minute, and it was just most of the stuff that I don't think was heard was just silly stuff that was about what's going on in the city of Detroit. But it was funny because if you can faintly hear it on Raw, some of the stuff I think got on the air, but I don't know if it was edited or whatever, because it was kind of funny hearing people talk about a cop that nobody knew. All the guys that were in the front row that was wearing the red were the main ones saying it. And I don't know if that was the Cena group or the whatever, but those were the main guys that were doing mostly cheering all night. Was those guys in red in the front row. I don't know. It was a good show. I left before, I'm not a big Cena. I used to be a Cena fan, but I left before Cena because I knew, one, it was his birthday yesterday. 2, I really didn't want to hear a whole bunch of kids singing Happy Birthday. Right before the main event or whatever happened at the end or with the contract signing, me personally, I had to leave. And I wasn't the only one because I think as soon as Cena Brock contract signing came, you saw about maybe half the crowd just got up and walked out the door. Literally walked out the door.
Thanks a lot, Eugene, for calling in and giving us your live impressions of Raw and everything you had to go through to get in and out of the building. So it's much appreciated.
Yeah.
We'll chat with you some more on the Facebook group, so thanks for calling in. Abe in Augusta, Georgia, you are on now.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I think it was in the first season round you said, Debbie cannot hold down the truth. Well, they're trying to with you, so I don't know why they're targeting you for no freaking reason.
Well, now that you mention it, I didn't specify before. If you're a newer fan, the show that got flagged was one where I was rooming them pretty bad. Because what happened was we were taping before WrestleMania, whatever WrestleMania was in 2008, I don't remember, talking about Jeff Hardy going into WrestleMania, because it seemed like he was getting into the main event as far as the title matches go, and I think he had just lost to Orton maybe at the Rumble, and it seemed like he was maybe going to get back into the mix. But then the day after we taped, he got busted for the wellness policy. And I was like, fuck, man, this show's already in the can. We just did a whole thing on Jeff Hardy in WrestleMania, and now he's not going to be there. So I added some graphics that he went skiing instead of to WrestleMania, because I heard through the grapevine that there was some coke involved. Turns out it was probably angel dust. But when he did get busted in his home right after his contract ran up and they got all those drugs, there was some cocaine found, and I felt pretty fucking justified. So I think WWE should lift their claim on that, because I wasn't wrong. But that's not the only thing I did. I did read off a list of suggestions for new taglines for WWE, like where the big boys trade urine samples, fake fighting, fake tits, and real drugs for kids. When the going gets tough, tour Asia, lots of shit that was a real low blow. So, like I said, I'm sure some intern in Connecticut was like, Jesus fucking Christ. So that was the content in question that I'm sure was the real reason and not the actual claim of picture use or whatever. But now that that's clarified, Abe, what do you got to say?
Oh, man. Well, one, I do want to go back a little bit to last week. It was the promos, best of promos. One promo I do want to mention is it was the interview Mick Foley did with JR on that Raw 97.
Is this the sit-down interview about his childhood and his pre-WWF life?
Yeah, that's the one, because I saw it on DVD the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know his background at the time, and I didn't really mean Mankind with the kind of ear with the mouse and a few with the Undertaker. Mm-hmm. And that promo, he discussed like his past of, because at the time he was a few with Shawn Michaels, but they kind of wanted. He said I hated Shawn Michaels and all that other stuff, which I was laughing about when I was watching it, because you know how the rest in '97 felt about him. And when he discussed like why can't be my dream and all that kind of stuff, and then it was kind of weird. You may understand better than I do when he switched his character over, kind of as a face a little bit. And I do want to ask you something, if you don't mind.
Ask away. I love questions.
Can you go a little bit more? I remember you said in the video, Wrestling Lost quote is fucking so. Can you elaborate that a little bit, if you don't mind?
I think that's a whole show. To give you an idea, I'll give you a tidbit of a conversation I had with Kevin Kelly recently, because he wrote about it in his, I believe, WrestleZone article. But we were talking, I guess, the other month, and one thing I noticed is how I'm that guy now. And by that, I mean I don't watch WWE. I don't watch shit on TV. I mean, Rodney likes to joke it's Tuesday morning YouTube for me instead of Monday Night Raw, because I don't watch it as it happens. Like most people I know will DVR it and fast forward. I can't even be bothered. So if something interesting happens, I'll check it out. I'll watch WrestleMania or pay-per-view if the guys are getting together like this Sunday, that sort of thing. So I stopped watching Die Hard every week back in like 2006. It just got to be too much for me. That was a very bad year. But one thing I really noticed is I'm becoming that guy, like I said. And what that means is now when I watch the Rumble from, I guess, last year when they were in the TD Bank in Boston, this was the 40-man Rumble, so there's lots more people coming out. And when the music hits, I have no fucking idea who it is. And like the year before, I was watching WrestleMania at Lawrence's house, and he's got his, like, let's say, sister's fiance, and he's the type that you hate watching wrestling shows with, because he's always bugging you like, hey, whatever happened to the Big Boss Man? Hey, who's this guy? Hey, whatever happened to Ultimate Warrior? Who's Randy Orton? That sort of shit. And I just fucking hate that.
I do too.
Well, I'm sure everyone does, but I think I turned into that guy. And I could tell because when I watched that Rumble, the music would hit, and I'd have no idea who it is. I'm like, that's what Tyler Rex looks like? Who the hell is this? Oh, it's another Nexus guy or whatever. And I hated that I was that guy. But when it came to the music, I want to compare it to something Will Vafidez actually said on the show that I always loved. It's probably the most brilliant thing he ever said. He said that WWE's problem in terms of characters is if you line people up, like if you lined up the roster against a wall, facing the wall, and you only saw their back, most of those guys don't really stand out. You wouldn't be able to pick them out. And I thought that's really fucking true. I mean, sure, there's a handful like Khali or fucking Mark Henry and Cena, that obviously, but there's so many cookie-cutter guys as part of their grind people up in the developmental system and mold them in our own image sort of thing, and there's not that many characters that stand out anymore outside of like Santino or Kane and blah, blah, blah. And that's not to say everyone's got to be over the top, zany, goofy shit, but there's a very obvious distinction between now and then. And I almost want to say it's the pre-Hollywood writer team and the post-Hollywood writer team. And wrestling hasn't been benefited or gotten better in an artistic sense since. So for the music that I was alluding to, this is the conversation I had with Kevin Kelly. There's certain signs that I pick up on in wrestling that I like to compare to the canary in the mine. You know how some like coal miners or whoever back in the old days would have a canary in the mine so that when there was noxious gases that they couldn't smell just yet, if the canary died, they knew to get the hell out of there. That's a warning sign. And a warning sign to me is the music. And I'll give you a perfect example. When I heard this music at that Rumble and I couldn't tell who the fuck it is, well, a lot of the music just sounded the same. And it was all this generic, shitty rock shit. There's no fucking soul there. And here's a perfect example for you, Abe. If you look at WWF music in the past, Jim Johnston stuff, I guess he still does the music, but whatever. Look at what's going to be the lineup now, like WWE music now. Well, I look at WWF The Music Volume 3, the CD they put out in 1998 in the height of the Attitude Era, artistically. Every track is completely different than the other and distinctive. And like I said, they're not all cartoon characters like Tugboat and the Head Shrinkers and Repo Man sort of shit. I mean, certainly Val Venus is cartoonish in and of itself, but the point is, Stone Cold Steve Austin's track, jumping to The Undertaker's track, Kane's track, Goldust's track, Mankind, DX, The Rock, Val Venus, up and down the card. It's not just main eventers. Everybody had a distinctive sound, a distinctive look, a distinctive style. And it's all embodied in the music. And I'm not saying that wrestling lives and dies by the music, but I'm just using that as the canary in the cave for this sort of example. When you listen to Kane's music, Stone Cold's music, The Rock's music, each track totally mirrors every trait of that character at that particular time. And they're all distinctive. Everything you need to know about Goldust is told in nonverbal terms through his music. Every little aspect. Kane's whole backstory with the whole fucking parlor burning down and the fire and revenge and sadness and all that other sort of shit, you can hear it in the music. And that's the best analogy I could give for now. And like I said, it could be a whole other topic, a whole other show. That's just a small bit of it, of how I feel like wrestling has lost its soul. It's so homogenized now. It's so structured in a Hollywood writing sort of bullshit way. I mean, it's like when we talked about promos recently on that show. Is there any surprise why when guys who are given the respect and the freedom to talk in their own way, like Michaels and Michael Hayes and Piper and Foley and those sort of guys, cut promos that connect with the audience and stand out because it's so different than the typical line-reading bullshit that they're taught to do, the younger people, every week? It's no surprise. That's the best example I could give right now to keep it short, so to speak, for you, Abe. So I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Abe. Erin in Maryland?
I want to kind of refer to you about the canary in the cave sort of deal. That when you take a look at guys, even in freaking TNA, for example, I mean, when there's guys in there have a change of entrance themes or guys to suit their characters, like, as their entrance scenes went on, it did get even better for them. For like a guy like Samoa Joe, when he had that Godzilla built-like intro, and then the guy rapping his way down to the ring, that suits his character because he is a thug-type guy with the Muay Thai MMA shoot background, and it's like the guy be a legit threat, could kick your ass. And then when you have a rap song that with Kurt Angle, it does not even sound that great. It just feel like, who in the hell is this guy? But when in WWF, when he has patriotic dun 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 theme, that suits him because we need wrestling in more nowadays to suit their characters. And like you said, instead of this generic rock bullshit. Because when you look at wrestlers, in fact, even with some bad songs. In fact, they were in the Attitude Era, openly admit. But they had some songs that uniquely fit their characters. And when Jim Johnston wrote for them, he knew how to write songs for that specific list of superstars.
It's a symptom of a bigger problem because, like I said, it doesn't live or die by the music quality. But what you were alluding to with Jim Johnston's music in the Attitude Era, or at least at that time, well, maybe there's more depth and character to the music because there's more depth and character to the wrestlers then, as opposed to now.
Yes, indeed that. And I mean, when you take a look at guys who I consider have the best teams, like a guy for William Regal, for example, that it sounds more like of a British, higher up sort of power guys, like, the guy who is like a higher up in royalty, that sort of guy who can come up there and legitimately beat your ass. Even the guys, with entrance scenes you don't think would mix actually become the most creative thing about them. Even with guys like you talked about previously on the shows with Bryan Danielson in the Final Countdown. Because, admittedly, as goofy as that song is, you think you listen to it at first and it doesn't suit Bryan Danielson, but over time, that it became one of the most popular entrance themes in wrestling history because of the way that Bryan Danielson wrestled and how the fans got connected to him. Even a guy like Claudio Castagnoli, back in the old days of Ring of Honor, where he started using this R. Kelly remix of a song, and it started going with the "Hey" chants over there. It's just connected with his personality. So it's like, as long as you have the charisma and the skill to back it up, you can make any goofy song make it seem popular. And that just seems why WWE is just seemingly unpopular, because you have these bland, unpolished guys coming out to these generic songs. It's like, who the fuck is this guy?
Well, yeah, and like I said, it's a symptom of a larger problem. But I am glad you brought up Claudio, because I wanted to touch on that before we get to you, Royce. And that was his debut on TV on SmackDown this past Friday. Of course, as Antonio Cesaro. I still feel like it's missing a syllable. I just wish there was one more letter in there, and it was Antonio Cesario. I think that rolls off the tongue a little better, but I think Cesaro's growing on me. Either way, I love Claudio, and he was one of the nicest, friendliest, and coolest guys that I worked with in wrestling, so I was very happy to see him get on TV. It really made me feel good. I actually texted him and said that I wish him the best of luck. It made me very happy. The segment, I'd love to say, was perfect because it was almost there. First of all, I'll save the one criticism for the end, because as it was, Teddy Long, of course, being forced into, his arm is being put behind his back, and by Johnny Ace, he's dangling this axe over his head, and he needs to take this job to get the money, and blah, blah, blah. So he makes him this British guard outside of his office, and Regal's being a douche and just trying to get him to flinch, and that didn't work. And then what was great is this is such great sympathy for Teddy Long. In the next shot, Antonio walks in with Oksana. So Oksana, what a fucking cunt. She was just with Teddy Long because he was in power, and now that he's not in power anymore, she's with her old friend, wink, wink, and it just made her look like such a bitch. And then, of course, Claudio, he's got a very distinct speaking style coming from Switzerland, so it's very cool to hear all these different accents in one segment, no less. But it put him over by the door opening and Johnny Ace saying, "I've heard a lot about you." That's cool. Makes him seem like he's someone important. So he gets his meeting with Johnny Ace, and then Johnny Ace kicks some more dirt on Teddy Long on the way out. It was just almost perfect. And I say almost, and I hate to bring this up, but of course, you know I'm talking about the saxophone music and the lighting change. And it's just so stupid. Like, why does WWE feel the need to do this fourth wall sitcom shit? Well, maybe not fourth wall, but instead of concentrating on what I should be paying attention to, their dialogue, all I'm thinking is, why are they playing this music? This wouldn't happen in real life. Why would this happen? Stupid details that they felt they had to add, I guess, for whatever reason, that just really didn't help. And if anything, it took a little away from an otherwise perfect segment that I loved. So I'm giving WWE credit. It made me happy seeing Claudio on TV. Antonio Cesaro is going to have a lot of awesome opponents. Hell, he'd even make an interesting foreign elitist tag team with Alberto Del Rio if they ever chose to do that. But either way, Claudio is such a great wrestler, such a great presence, so unique, and I hope he does real well because he deserves it, and it's cool seeing one of the good guys succeed. So all the best to Antonio Cesaro. Love that segment. And let's give the final word to you, Royce.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about a few more things I noticed on Raw. First of all, they were showing all the clips of, like, Brock's first run, and it was pretty obvious. Like, in all the opponents they were showing, it was pretty obvious what company they work for now. I thought that was pretty funny.
What a coincidence.
That was pretty funny. And there was this whole kind of weird subplot with Kane and Orton with Paul Bearer. And
I'm in the freezer!
And when Kane threw it back in, I thought that was pretty funny. When Paul was screaming like no, and Kane just shoved him back in, I thought it was pretty funny as well.
I don't know why he would take him out to put him back in, but whatever.
Because he's Kane. I don't know. But I kind of want to talk about Lord Tensai, and it's kind of like at best lukewarm reception he's kind of getting.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of want to tie that back to last year with Sin Cara and how that didn't really work out as well as they wanted it to as well because, the suspension and he got injured. I guess it's still pretty early to kind of rule out Lord Tensai. But you think that if that doesn't work either, you think it's going to kind of slow him down from probably hiring guys from, like, big names from, like, different kind of countries and stuff like that? Because like, they tried it. They could say, well, we tried it twice, but it didn't work, so there. You think they'll do that?
Well, they could always use that spin. It just really sucks because I liked Mystico's work in Mexico before they signed him, and you'd think this is a big deal. They rarely go outside the country and sign a big name that's currently competing in another country. So them signing Mystico and Sin Cara, as he became, such a flop it turned out to. It's like everything just went wrong in every way, and it sucks because there was potential there. As for Tensei, whatever, timing's just bad because everyone was like, oh, they're going to position him post-WrestleMania against Cena, but then we got Brock. And this guy's supposed to be a monster, but we got Brock. Like, who the fuck is going to care about this guy when Brock's on the fucking show in a much more believable and cooler role. People don't like getting their intelligence insulted when we all know it's fucking A-Train, and they're not being overt about it. They're kind of beating around the bush with that. A lot of people suggested that he'd be better off on SmackDown. It's probably for the best for him. I know it's kind of cluttered there with Khali and Mark Henry and Big Show and other big guys, but Brock is too big a fish,
Brock.
I think, for... Excuse me?
He's Brock. Like, you can't not say he's not Brock.
He's just too dominant for there to be another monster, even if it's a mid-card thing. I mean, he beat Cena last week, and it doesn't seem to have helped.
You think his style kind of works into that, too? It's kind of like they're giving him, like, these kind of short matches. And usually with these big guys, he's supposed to do, like, big power moves, like bam, 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 like how they did with Brock. He comes in, does, like, an abridged version of Why Would She Care, just power move, power move, power move. But with Mortenza, it's kind of methodical in a way, and it doesn't really translate well to getting heat for a big monster.
It's really not, and I mean, maybe there's a chance that they could readjust things to make it work a little better, but we'll see if they end up doing that. But as it is, that's going to wrap it up for the Wrestling Roundtable. Thanks to Will Brooks on the panel and the Bravados for calling in, and of course all the callers. Thank you so much. Go to WrestlingRoundtable.com, vote in the polls, sign up for the message board, sign up for the newsletter, and shop at the Amazon store. So join us next time. In a couple weeks, we'll be back to talk about Extreme Rules and the Brock Cena main event and UFC on Fox 3. So I'm Eric Santamaria. Thank you for listening, and join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com.